Well, good morning and welcome to the 2021 Manufacturing Summit. I'm Ian McLean. I'm President and CEO of the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce. Before we get started, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that we do live and work on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee peoples, as we seek a renewed relationship based on a foundation of mutual understanding and respect. As participants in today's virtual event, we are coming together as one. We believe everyone is free to be their true self and receive the same respect and opportunity regardless of age, ethnicity, gender, culture, identity, sexual orientation, beliefs, or language. We hope you'll join us in fostering a positive environment here today to ensure a safe and welcoming space for all. For those of you who have not attended the Manufacturing Summit before, this is the 10th annual event, and every year we have guests joining us from across the region and beyond, an indication of the importance of manufacturing and technology applications, both here in the Waterloo region, but right across the province and the country. Particularly over the past year, the role and importance of manufacturing and supply chain sector has been on full display. It's vital to our economic success, and we've experienced firsthand the need for a strong, healthy, and self-sustaining Canadian supply chain. Today's event is a true community partnership with the Waterloo Region Manufacturing Innovation Network, the Centre for Family Business, the Excellence in Manufacturing Consortium, and the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce. You'll hear more about these incredible community partners throughout the day. I would like to also take an opportunity to thank our sponsors for today's event. Without their support, this program and all chamber events would not be able to take place. So thank you to our continued support to the entire Deloitte team. We are thrilled to have them as our founding sponsor. Our gold sponsors, the Business Development Bank of Canada, Cowan Insurance Group, TD Bank, Toyota Motor Manufacturing Canada, and the Waterloo Economic Development Corporation. Our silver sponsors today, Kunz Electroplating and Simplify Supply Chain Solutions. Our bronze sponsors today, CIBC, Conestoga Meat Packers, GHD, and the Immigration Partnership of Waterloo Region. And finally, our community partners, the Centre for Family Business, the City of Kitchener, Excellence in Manufacturing Consortium, and the Manufacturing Innovation Network. I'd now like to welcome Kevin Lambert, tax partner with Deloitte, to say a few words on behalf of our founding sponsor.
Thanks for the introduction, Ian. Deloitte is pleased to be the founding sponsor of the 2021 Manufacturing Summit and to work with many business leaders in this community and be part of their growth journey. We are increasing our focus and investment on serving clients in the mid-market, including in and around the Kitchener-Waterloo corridor, requiring our diverse set of services and skills. Kitchener-Waterloo is considered the industrial automation epicenter of Canada, and we want to support this in the region. Our goal is to consistently deliver innovative, practical knowledge and experience to help companies in the fields of industrial products, manufacturing, aerospace and defense, and construction to improve overall business performance. I would like to thank the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce for hosting today's event. And thank you to the community of sponsors and partners who have collaborated to make this day of learning and networking a success. Especially given the current environment, we believe it's more important than ever for opportunities like this to provide a platform for businesses to stay informed and to continue to evolve and thrive. We can all agree that it's been a year like no other, and today we acknowledge and celebrate the resiliency of our local businesses and manufacturers as we continue to pivot towards our new normal. With that said, I hope you leave today's event feeling that you've gained new perspectives, tools, and inspiration to help you transform and potentially disrupt the current way you do business. Thank you, and back to you, Ian.
Well, thank you, Kevin, and thank you again to Deloitte for supporting this important event. We have a great lineup of industry experts who will be joining us today for some in-depth conversations on the future of the industry and the importance of local manufacturing and sustainable supply chains. So thank you again for your continued support and for attending the 2021 Manufacturing Summit. We hope you enjoy today's program.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Periya Karim. I am the chair of Immigration Partnership Council. I am happy to be here today and introduce our first guest speaker for the day. Pierre Cleroux was appointed Vice President Research and Chief Economist at the Business Development Bank of Canada, BDC, in 2012. Pierre leads a team of experts analyzing economic data to identify business and sector trends impacting Canadian entrepreneurs. Over his 25-year career as an economist, he has held several influential positions. Pierre has worked for the government of Saudi Arabia as Vice President, Business Analysis in the National Industry Clusters Development Program. As the Quebec Assistant Deputy Minister for Economic Development, Innovation, and Export Trade, responsible for the economic policy and programs to support small and medium-sized businesses. And for 12 years at the Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses in various roles, including economist and Quebec Vice President. He holds a Bachelor of Arts and a master's degree in economics from Laval University, as well as an MBA from the MIT Sloan School of Management. Following his keynote, Pierre will be joined by Alex Billy, Business Development Manager, Commercial Insurance with Cohen Insurance Group. Alex will facilitate a live Q&A session with Pierre. But first, please join me in welcoming Pierre Cleroux.
Thank you, Perry. Good morning, everybody. My presentation has two parts. First, I'm going to talk about where we are in terms of the recovery of the economy. Also, what should we expect for the next few years in terms of economic growth? And the second part is about something to watch for as a business owner or business person. So first, let's start with the economy. As you know, the world economy was in a recession last year, a contraction of about 3%, but the recovery is quite rapid, and we expect a growth of 6% this year. Why is the recovery so quick? Well, this is a good example. Here you see the world manufacturing sector, and I compare the current recession with the last one in 2008, 2009. This time around, it took only 11 months to go back to the pre-crisis level compared to more than 2 years in 2008, 2009. It's because this recession is different. This is not a financial crisis. This is not a housing crisis. This is basically a self-imposed recession because government had to put the economy on pause to fight the COVID-19. So the recovery this time, it's much faster than what we have experienced in the past. So this is true at the world level. And when I talk about Canada a little bit later, I'm going to come back to this concept because it's very important. The US now, as you know, the US is the #1 economy in the world. It's also our #1 trade partner. 80% of everything we export is going to the US. So this is a very important economy for us. And we are very optimistic about the US economy. After a contraction of 3.5% last year, we expect a growth of 7%, which is kind of a record growth for the United States. Why is that? Well, there's two reasons why we are optimistic. The first one is vaccination. 48% of Americans have been receiving both vaccines, so they are fully vaccinated, a little bit more than in Canada. And this is important because vaccination is very efficient to reduce the number of COVID-19 cases. The graph that you see now is showing you the number of new cases per million. In blue, you have the United States. In red, you have Canada. And in yellow, you have the world. So if you look at the second wave of the virus, you can see the second wave was much more important in the US, and it did have quite a negative impact on the economy. But if you look at the end of the graph, you see the third wave, which actually the number of new cases per million was lower in the US than in Canada because of vaccination. Vaccination was faster in the US because they produced the Pfizer vaccine. So that's the first reason why we are optimistic. Vaccination is very important in the US, and it's going to allow the economy to fully recover. Second reason is the new US administration is introducing a number of programs to stimulate the economy. $1.9 trillion for the rescue plan. They are negotiating a $1 trillion infrastructure framework and a $2 trillion program for clean energy. So all this money that is injected in the economy is going to stimulate the growth. So that's the reason why we are optimistic. We're not the only one to be optimistic. The level of American business confidence is also very elevated. It's actually higher than it was before the crisis. So for the US, 2021 is going to be the year of the recovery, and that should also be positive for 2022 as well. Canada now. Well, this is where we are. In terms of jobs, we lost 3 million jobs at the beginning of the crisis, but the initial recovery has been strong. We had some setback during the second phase of the virus and also the third phase. But today we are at 18.8 million jobs, so about 98% the level of job we had before the crisis. It's about 300,000 jobs missing. So as you can see, we have not fully recovered, but we are really in a good direction. The recovery is really well on the way. But the recovery has been quite different from one sector to another. In total, for the economy, we are at 98% the level of job we had. Manufacturing is at 98% as well. And some services like finance and provincial services, they are actually doing better than before the crisis. But if you look at the bottom of the graph, you can see that some sectors like accommodation and food services, where there's still a lot of restrictions and the border is closed, while this sector is really affected by COVID-19, is still really affected. But the good news for Canada is that the recovery has been stronger and faster than in other developed economies. We are, like I said, at 98% the level of job compared to 96% for the US. So actually the recovery has been faster in Canada. And if I had the United Kingdom, France, or Germany on this graph, you would see that we did better than these other developed economies. Why is that? Well, there's two reasons for that. We actually did a better job to fight COVID-19. I know it's hard to believe because when we look at Canada, it was a very difficult year, but actually we did better than other economies. The second reason why the recovery is faster is because the federal government has introduced a number of programs to help Canadians and also Canadian businesses. Here on this graph, I show you government transfer for two Canadians, so two people. They increased by 58% or $60 billion. As a result, our disposable income has increased by 9.9%. The disposable income is all the revenues that Canadians are getting from salary, investment, and also from government programs. And these programs have been so significant that our disposable income, the money we have in our pocket, has increased by almost 10%. As a result, the recovery has been faster. A good example is retail sales rebounded very quickly after the first lockdown. Retail sales went back to the pre-crisis level and has been higher ever since. The housing market, as you know, has been increasing very significantly, which is surprising. Usually during a recession, the housing market will slow down. But in Canada, over the last 12 months, the housing market has been increasing very significantly. The graph that you see is housing starts, which is at a record level, which is a good news because this is creating jobs, a lot of jobs. But the housing prices has been increasing, which is also a good news for Canadian. If you own a house, well, you're richer today than you were 12 months ago. So one of the concern is all these programs has increased the level of money in the economy, and inflation has been increasing as well. It's at 3.6% now, compared to around 2% before the crisis. Should we be worried about this? Well, we believe that this is a temporary phenomenon. Part of it is what we call a base effect. Inflation is calculated over 12 months. So the number that you see today, compare the level of price of today compared to April 2020, which was down. So that's the reason why we have such a high level of inflation. The second reason is there's a lot of imbalance in the economy because of the pandemic. A good example of that is the price of lumber has doubled since the beginning of the pandemic, because the strong demand from housing, but also a lot of Canadians have decided to renovate their house, and the demand for lumber has just jumped. As a result, the price has been increasing. But this should go back to normal as the economy fully reopens and Canadians are spending their money just like before the crisis. So we're not to worry about the inflation. Of course, we follow this very closely, but we don't believe that it's going to lead to an increase of interest rate. So the manufacturing sector now, well, the Canadian manufacturing sector has been coming back very quickly. Only after a few months, the level of production was almost back to the pre-crisis level. But over the last few months, we can see there's a slowdown. And the reason for that is on the automotive side. The auto manufacturing sector has been rebounding very quickly just last summer after the first lockdown. But lately, the production has been going down. Same thing for our export. If you look at this graph, at the beginning of the crisis, our Canadian export in automotive has really dropped, came back to the pre-crisis level, but now it's really slowing down. For people in this sector, you all know that the problem is on the production side. The problem is we have a supply chain issue with semiconductor chips, which is kind of a shortage around the world. There's a strong demand coming from different sectors of the economy, and the pandemic has kind of slowed down the production for a while. So as a result, there's such a shortage of semiconductor chips that is actually slowing down the production. The good news is the demand for automotive in North America is still very strong. The graph here is showing you the demand on the Canadian side, and we're back to the pre-crisis level. And on the US side, inventory are at the historic low. We never saw such a low level of inventory. So the good news is the demand is still strong. The problem is more on the supply chain issue. So in the next few months, we are optimistic. We believe it's more a question of months, probably 4 to 6 months before this semiconductor chip is coming back to normal and production can resume as much as before the crisis. The good news is the demand is still strong, so we don't expect to see this situation to be like that for very long. We believe it's going to solve in the next 4 to 6 months. One other subsector of the manufacturing sector that we're looking for is the food manufacturing, which is a very important sector for Canada. As you can see on this graph, well, the level of sales has rebounded very quickly after the crisis, and it's now more elevated than before the pandemic. Our level of export is also increasing. So the demand for Canadian food has been strong during the pandemic and is now increasing. So this sector is performing very well. It will continue to perform well. So overall, the recovery, at the exception of the automotive sector where there's a supply chain issue. So the manufacturing sector is one of the sectors that is coming back very quickly in the Canadian economy. So the economy so far has been rebounded. Some sectors are still struggling, for example, the accommodation and food services. So what should we expect in the next 2 years for Canada? Well, we believe that the economy is going to rebound very quickly in 2021. We expect growth of 6% this year and 3.5% for 2022. Why are we optimistic? Well, there's 5 reasons explaining our result. First, vaccination is really accelerating in Canada. Now 70% of Canadians have received at least 1 dose of the vaccine. And we believe that by the end of the summer, actually about 70% of Canadians should have been vaccinated with the 2 doses. So vaccination is key because when most people are vaccinated, we're able to lift the restriction on our economy. A good example is the manufacturing sector. After the first lockdown, what you see in red is the situation of the Canadian manufacturing sector. So as you can see, after only a few months, the situation went almost back to normal. The blue line represents the situation of the Canadian manufacturing sector during the last recession in 2008, 2009. It took almost 4 years to go back to the pre-crisis level. So this is a good news about this recession. This recession was difficult, but the recovery is much faster than what we have experienced before. And that's the case, I show you manufacturing, but that's also the case in other sectors, even restaurants. When you lift the restriction, what we learned in 2020 is this sector is coming back very quickly. Second reason to be optimistic is commodity prices has been strong despite the recession. In yellow, for example, you see the price of lumber that is almost double now what it was before the pandemic. But lumber was not the only one. Energy, metals, minerals, agriculture, all these sectors are benefiting from high commodity prices, which is important because, as you know, in Canada, we produce a lot of these commodities. Third reason of our optimism is government policy, which has helped the recovery, continue to help in 2021. A lot of these programs are still into effect. Some of them are going to be phasing out by the end of the summer, but it's still helping the Canadian economy. And as you know, our interest rates are low. We don't believe that we're going to see an increased interest rate before the next 12 months. So we still are going to operate in low interest rate environment. The fourth reason to be optimistic is coming from the consumer side. Every year, Canadians save about $18 billion. That was the case in 2019. Last year, Canadians saved more than $200 billion. This is not so surprising because during every recession, Canadians are saving more money because people are, there's a lot of uncertainty. But last year, $200 billion, that's really a record that we never reached before. The good news is part of this money is going to be spent this year and in 2022, and it's going to stimulate the economy. We believe that consumers are going to be the driver of the recovery, both in 2021 and 2022. Finally, on the business side, business investment intention that we keep track every quarter are back to the pre-crisis level. If you look at these numbers, we are at 83% now. 83% of Canadian businesses are saying they're going to invest this year the same amount of last year or more, which is back to the pre-crisis level. So 5 reasons to be optimistic. We believe that 2021 is going to be the year of the recovery. But of course, there's a risk to this forecast, and the biggest risk that we see is COVID-19. We know over the last 12 months that COVID-19 is full of surprise, and a lot of experts are saying that we might have a fourth wave in the fall in Canada. The graph that you see is real numbers coming from the United Kingdom. They are all already inside the fourth wave. So we hope in Canada that we won't have a fourth wave. The level of vaccination is very high, one of the highest in the world. By the end of the summer, most Canadians will have received 2 doses, so we should be able to avoid the fourth wave. But this is the risk, and that's just something that we keep track very closely because it's a risk to our forecast. The last part of the presentation is something to watch for, and basically is a shortage of labor. This is the percentage of manufacturers in Canada who have difficulties to recruit people. It's now at 72%, which is very elevated. So in different part of the country, in different sector, but especially in manufacturing, it's getting more and more difficult to recruit people. One of the reasons, and the most important reason, is the fact that we have an aging population. I'm showing you the numbers for Ontario, but the number for Canada is about the same. 18% of people in Ontario today are over 65. In the next decade, this level is going to reach 23%. So we are aging, and that means that more and more Canadians are going to retire. Actually, baby boomers are ready to retire. Only in the last 12 months during the pandemic, 500,000 Canadians retired during that period of time. So that's the issue. A lot of Canadians are retiring, and there's not enough young people to compensate. This is how I show a good example here. In blue, you have the labor force in Ontario. So as you can see, over the last 10 years, the labor force has increased by 9%. In red, you have the level of employment in Ontario. And as you can see from the graph, the level of employment has been increasing faster than our labor force. That's the reason why we had a low unemployment rate before the crisis. And that's the reason why we have a shortage of labor. We are creating more jobs than the increase of the labor force. And fortunately, with the aging population, with all these baby boomers retiring, well, the labor force is not going to increase very rapidly. So that's the issue of shortage of labor. And to make things worse, immigration has dropped significantly in Canada and in Ontario last year because of the pandemic. Immigration is going to restart this year, but we kind of missed a year, and that's making the situation even worse. So there's no easy fix to that. There's no easy solution. Immigration is going to be part of the solution. Hiring people who have more difficulties to get a job, for example, people coming from outside the country, that's another solution. Hiring young people with no experience and training them, it's another solution. We also believe that investing in technology is really part of the solution. When you invest in technology, you reduce your need for workers, and in this current context is going to become very important. So this is important to understand for every entrepreneur. This is not a short-term problem. And fortunately, the shortage of labor is going to be with us for the next decade. So it's important to take action that will really help you for the next few years. So in conclusion, the recovery of the Canadian economy is well on the way, and we're almost back to the pre-crisis level. We still have some sectors struggling, but we are really going very well. So we expect a strong rebound of the economy in 2021. Vaccination is going very well. That should protect us against a fourth wave. So we believe that 2021 is going to be the year of the rebound, and 2022 is going to perform very well as well. So I'm going to stop here. We have time for questions, so I would be very happy to take your question.
Oh, thank you very much for that presentation, Pierre. I'm glad to see not only that we all can get out, but our economy is going to be doing well. So I do have a couple of questions. What do you see are the competitive advantages for Canadian manufacturers, and what should they focus on? I mean, I've been hearing that, containers, for instance, and shipping and supply and rising costs, hopefully that abates as the pandemic comes down and, our numbers go down and there's no fourth wave.
Yeah, there's no doubt right now there's some issues with on the supply chain. Sometimes the cost is increasing. Sometimes, like the automotive is a good example, where there's a disruption in one of the part, which is semiconductor chips. But these issues, we believe, are going to disappear as we're getting out of this pandemic. So in the next 6 months, at the beginning of 2022, we believe that supply chains will be back to normal, basically. So in terms of being successful in the future, we believe that the key element for Canadian manufacturers is technology. We cannot compete on labor costs, and labor costs are probably going to increase in the next few years because of shortage of labor. So it's very important to invest in technology to build this competitive advantage.
Perfect. So you've touched on connecting, the need for getting some talent, and obviously some technology improvements and the global change. Can you expand on its importance and again maybe elaborate to Canadian competitiveness in this sector?
The way we see it is a combination between talent and technology. There's a shortage of labor, but the good news, our talent in Canada are much, the level of education of our workers is much better than other countries, especially compared to the United States. So that's an advantage for Canadian manufacturers. If you combine that with technology, and you really can elevate your people and give them the right tool and a better tool and the training to use technology. So we see that the combination of talent and technology can really help companies to be more successful. So I know I talk a lot about technology, but in the context of shortage of labor where it's difficult to recruit more people, well, we believe that technology can really help to compensate for that. So it's reducing your need for workers And in the context right now, it's really one of the solutions.
Perfect. We do have one question from our audience, because again, more associated with talent and education. Do you think immigration can bring in this talent? You know, again, European countries have high levels of education similar to Canada.
Definitely, and immigration has been a big part of our success in Canada, and we believe it's going to be a bigger part of our success as we have an aging population. You know, the issue is baby boomers are retiring. There's not enough young people to compensate that, so we need people from outside. And the Canadian government is going to double the level of immigration in the next 3 years. Unfortunately, we had a setback in 2020 because of the pandemic, but we believe like immigration is going to restart and is going to be more important. So definitely this is going to be a big part of the solution.
Okay, perfect. Well, unfortunately, this is all the time we have, but thank you again, Pierre, for joining us today and helping kick off today's Manufacturing Summit. And also thank you to all for watching today's live session. Enjoy your day.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Matthew Starling. I'm the Assistant Group Manager at Toyota Motor Manufacturing in the Production Control Department here. And I'm very happy to be with the group today to introduce the PPE Pivots and Supply Chain Problems panel. Moderating the discussion, we have Tony Lamenta, President and CEO of Waterloo EDC, University of Waterloo alumnus. Tony has ties to the community for decades before helping to create the Waterloo EDC as the organization's inaugural leader in 2016. A community builder at heart, he relishes the opportunity to work with businesses, civic leaders, governments, and organizations like the Chambers of Commerce and tech ecosystem anchors to help build a strong, sustainable economy for the people of Waterloo region. Tony is the past chair of the Business and Economic Support Team for Waterloo Region, the partnership created to advocate on behalf of the local business community during the C-19 crisis. And he's currently a member of its leadership team. Passionate leader, he has careers spanned the public, private, and nonprofit sectors with executive roles in investment marketing, technology sales, and mining, as well as the province of Ontario, where he was the Assistant Deputy Minister of Investment and Industry. Okay, our first panelist today we have is Amber French. She's the founder and managing partner of Catalyst Capital, a firm focused on investing in Waterloo region. She holds the role as the Director of Strategic Capital for Communitech and is a partner at Archangel Network of Funds, a new $10 million fund that aims to demystify angel investing and make it more accessible. She's a previous founder of Supply and Protect PPE Access, Canada's largest marketplace for Canadian-made PPE. Amber holds a BSc from the University of Waterloo and is also the proud mom of 2 boys. And finally, we have Steve Mai, the president and owner of Eclipse Automation in Cambridge, Ontario. Over 20 years ago, Steve left a successful career with a vision to reshape the landscape of automation. His raw ideology about progress stems from innovation, liking what you do, doing things better, and responding to change and understanding that things just have to make sense. Steve has led Eclipse into foreign markets and has driven positive change in local economies. He is a founding partner of the Smart Automation Group, servicing international customers, and he has also expanded the company to 14 facilities in Canada, the US, and Europe. Eclipse Automation is one of Canada's fastest growing companies and has received the Gold Standard designation and is a recipient of Canada's Best Managed Companies for the last 7 years running. So please join me in welcoming Amber, Steve, and Tony to today's panel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good stuff. Thanks, Matt. Always a pleasure to be introduced by a representative of Waterloo Region's largest manufacturing employer. So terrific. My name is Tony Lamenta. That is how the last name is pronounced. Always you get brownie points if you can get that right. And I'm looking forward to this discussion. Let's get started. So there's a high probability, Steve and Amber, that we would not have met were it not for the pandemic. I mean, we might have bumped into each other maybe at events, maybe grabbed a beer, you know, but it's funny what, you this local challenge has led to. So let's start off, Steve. You pivoted really quickly at the start. Talk about a quick assessment of the need and moving to produce PPE. Can you give our audience a bit of background on Eclipse Automation, and maybe talk about the reasons behind the shift and the early days?
Yeah, sure, Tony. So Eclipse Automation, we service the healthcare industry quite extensively throughout the world. So when the pandemic hit, I, like everybody else, was watching TV. Actually, I was flying back from Europe at the time. And when I got back to Canada, we were hearing about the PPE shortage and all of the challenges that we're going to be faced and have faced over the last year and a half. But in that, first of all, I was quite curious. Then it kind of, I think the emotion went to more embarrassment, because we're front end on all automation opportunities worldwide for the last 20 years, and I barely knew what an N95 was at that time, because there was never a need to produce one on Canadian soil, I guess, at that time. And then I quickly, said to, how can we help with this? I mean, Eclipse Automation, our core of what we do is when a manufacturer wants to ramp up their production and bring it to market and this needs assistance with a realization process, they come to us, we design build it, we based on specifications that they need to get to market. So this is core to our business. So in this case, it was unique because it wasn't a customer that needed it, it was a country. So we decided to look at why, first of all, very quickly had to understand why it isn't being done here in Canada. And then we looked at where the foundational elements to correct, to start correction was. And we believed it had to be foundationally corrected in the very start of the process. Going and bringing in and trying to understand why supply chain broke down and all of those types of things immediately wasn't in our DNA. That's not where we were looking. We were looking at, what do we need? What's the know-how we need in this country to be able to take care of ourselves, period. So we set off on a journey to assist with that. We reached out to the government organizations. We tried to get a better handle on it. We reached out to partners all over the world that could assist us through various licensing deals and such. And then we started bringing know-how into this country, meaning equipment that we could evolve very quickly to get it out to manufacturers that could produce. So then fast forwarding, we started bringing equipment into the country, started bringing it to other manufacturers that were looking to stand up and support this initiative for PPE, specifically for surgical masks and N95s. And then we quickly realized that nobody was buying N95 machines, but everyone was buying surgical mask machines. And then so it begged the question, why? And so we had to start looking at that issue. And what we found was that the reason is there was no path for commercialization, none. Supply chain was completely broken in the country. Certification was completely broken. Testing was broken. So if I had to give you an analogy, our entire PPE agenda, what we found out, was built on a swamp. So the foundation of the system was built in a swamp. That's what I would say.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I recall was early on, after conversations with both the feds and the province, and they're, even before the Ontario Together and NGen support requested, you just decided to do it. I remember many conversations said, I'm just going to bring some of this equipment in, and we're going to learn by doing. And you learned very quickly, that there were major gaps in the system, and the landscape was broken. Amber, you've got as well, as we talk about kind of this initial period, you have a unique and pretty remarkable story about the PPE shortage yourself, working with others in Communitech stepping up in the community and founding Supply and Protect. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, so I mean, back February, March, to Steve's point, it became wholly clear that Canada as a country was just completely unprepared for the constraints that the supply chain was going to face because of COVID. So, I mean, this was really felt, especially at the community level at that point. So I didn't have some PPE or supply chain experience at that point in time. I feel like I've gotten quite the crash course over the last year and a half or so. But I mean, it started out with the PPE drive. So, I mean, back, I think this was end of March of last year. Again, the community physicians were having a really hard time getting their hands on PPE. So hospitals were having a hard time, government was having a hard time, and it was really trickling down to the community level. So it was really neat. Waterloo Region stepped up as a whole. A lot of the local businesses ended up donating the products in that they had. It operated out of Westmount Golf Course. It's really neat because it ended up becoming the longest running PPE drive in Canada. So that was just the way Waterloo Region tends to step up. During this PPE drive, though, obviously it's a very short-term solution. So I really started to turn my mind to how do we create something that's more sustainable. So during the wind down of the PPE drive, we ended up ramping up PPE access. So it's a not-for-profit, again, meant to support Waterloo Region community frontline workers. And originally it was almost operating more like a co-op. So we would pool capital to be able to make some of these big purchases, bring in PPE, and then be able to parse it out to the frontline workers in our region. The same time this was happening, all of the PPE manufacturers in Canada were starting to ramp up. And Tony, you know, like within Waterloo Region, we had over 100 different businesses pivot and start producing some sort of PPE or COVID-related product. So again, Waterloo Region was really at the forefront of some of these changes and really stepping up to just help provide for the shortages in our country. And
yeah,
as
it's to nuts, wasn't it? Look, everything from swabs to gowns to kind of gloves there, and every kind of mask, right?
Yeah, and I mean, as these Canadian manufacturers started to come online, another problem became quite evident. Most of these producers had pivoted into producing, so it wasn't their first line of business. So they didn't have the efficient marketing, sales, distribution channels in place. So even though they were producing mass quantities of like top quality PPE, it was their sales tended to be very geographically constrained. So within the region that their business operated in. So we ended up pivoting PPE access into a new not-for-profit called Supply and Protect, where we basically it became an online resource, an online marketplace for Canadian-made PPE. At the height of the pandemic, it was considered Canada's largest marketplace for PPE. We were representing over 40 Canadian manufacturers, helping them to connect to various private businesses, whether it's a small mom and pop shop all the way up to some fairly large enterprise clients as well. But it was such a neat project to be part of. As the supply chains tended to right itself, sales started to decline as people reverted to buying some of the foreign products that were starting to come back in the process of winding right now. But for a good 8 months of the year, it did a ton of good. We funneled millions and millions of pieces of PPE out to businesses and frontline workers who really needed it. So it's just, again, like amazing how the Canadian manufacturers really stepped up to fill this void, and it was an important void to fill.
Yeah, and when I think about this story, back to you, Steve, there's a kind of catharsis here, but it leaves you feeling a bit empty, because when you think about the supply chain challenges going forward, and more importantly, things like certification, the ability to commercialize and actually make, turn this into a profitable local new business line, you have to scratch your head about kind of the gaps that remain in the overall ecosystem. But you recently donated or eclipsed 1.5 million medical grade masks as part of the kind of COVID safe initiative, which was just a huge gesture, very well received by businesses, small businesses who kind of been on the front lines, most impacted by this pandemic. And from the standpoint of Steve Mai, innovator, entrepreneur, why don't you share some, like if you had to list like the 2 or 3 top gaps that remain that are going to require urgent attention, whether it's a Made in Canada certification, just for the benefit of members and folks listening who may not actually understand what those challenges are and kind of what needs to happen. Can you give us your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. So first of all, I'd like to say that, Canada has some of the best innovators in the world. We're hardworking people, well-educated, some of the best manufacturing capabilities in the world.
Yeah.
So that kind of leads me to my second point. We don't need government's help to help us do what we already do. What we need help with is to take down red tape in this, and which is a foundational element that's completely broken with the supply chain system, the certification system, and the testing system. We do not today control the process of certification of many forms of PPE in this country. And this is a complete failure by our system and what we need to do. It's not because we're not technically able to create PPE. I mean, CAPM is an organization that was formed to drive agendas forward so that we could control the process, meaning make better PPE that's specifically designed to combat COVID. We used PPE that was specifically designed for other purposes because COVID didn't exist. Okay, so I want to make that one point clear. And then we continually hang our hat on those items while not being able to commercialize because we don't have certain certifications. We don't have access to supply chain. We don't have, even tariffs put in place that are going to be required for us to be able to sustain what we need to do moving forward. Okay, so it's the foundation that needs to be fixed. It's not the manufacturers of the process. We're one of the best in the world, hands down.
Yeah. Amber, your thoughts on the same question? Obviously, having gone through this very intense and from a long-term standpoint, kind of relatively short, 12-month, 15-month arc. What are the kind of the few things that you think stand out for you as gaps that we really need to fix so that it actually is cathartic and we can move in the right direction?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, I would mirror what Steve says about owning the standard process, the standards. The length of time that it's taking for our Canadian manufacturers to get the certifications is incredible. I think, Steve, we were talking before this call, you had put in for NIOSH certification back last April, and you keep getting bumped and bumped and bumped and bumped, and it's just that's not acceptable. It's really slows down what we're able to do as a country, what we're able to provide for. The thing is, too, when we don't own the standards, we're not going to own the IP, we're not going to keep the control, and we're not going to be a player in the global innovation. It's something that we have the power to do. It's just that, like Steve said, there's a lot of red tape that needs to be fixed right now.
Yeah, indeed. So maybe let's turn the attention to the kind of the community supports that are going to be required over this next period. And, folks are starting to talk about a pandemic of the unvaccinated. And I don't want to kind of get too far into the weeds, but when you get back into social and economic life in Waterloo region, and specifically, a company like Eclipse Automation, which is a life sciences process automation leader globally, are there any gaps that you think can be closed with some local efforts? There's been a lot of talk. Steve, you remember the chat about melt blown manufacturing? You can get a melt blown facility here, and some other companies like Canadian Shield and Inksmith started to do, take some steps on that front. When you think about local steps, because I'm all about what can we actually do, is there anything we can do other than just kind of advocate and be kind of, as opposed to just being critics? Like, what can we do to get the things that we need in our community to kind of turn this around?
Yeah, I would say we need to start trusting each other. That's where I would come with it. I mean, we've had shutdowns that were more extensive than anywhere in the world because the default was not to trust that we could combat it once we understood what we were faced with. We have meltblown. We have on CAPM, 7 of the members, founding members of CAPM, produced meltblown today, but the government said that we don't have enough and invested $29 million in it to stand it up when we already have enough. We have PPE manufacturers that are being soliciting to the government that their barriers are what's killing the market here. And they've been doing it for well over a year, not because they're not great manufacturers, not because they're not great innovators, not because they're not great at what they do or are willing to help, but it's because these barriers continually are in their way. So when I look at, local community, right? I mean, that's why we delivered and donated 1.2 million surgical masks, because, from our standpoint, we had level 3 surgical grade masks sitting in a warehouse while we made up a new category called face covering. To me, that's extremely embarrassing when you want to talk about science. And so I don't want to get into that part of it. But at the end of the day, when you want to talk about science, you need empirical data. Okay.
Yeah, Steve. Actually, just while we're on that, let's remember that let's not assume that the members understand kind of the importance of understanding COVID-19 is an airborne pathogen and what that actually means versus all the deep cleaning theater, and the sanitize this and, Clorox that. I've often heard the analogy the health authorities are fighting a ground war, but it's really an aerial assault here, right? And we need to understand that, and that actually drives mitigation measures and in a way to kind of reopen with not very complicated, masks become really important. Things like ventilation become really, really important, right? HVAC and CO2 monitors. So, the science has evolved, and even organizations like the World Health Organization and the public health authorities, around the world have essentially failed at being kind of at the front end of this, right? And now they're starting to pivot, and you wonder whether it's a skin in the game issue in that they're too far removed from the front lines, whether they've become bureaucracies. But back to kind of how does an understanding of the real mitigation steps help drive, over and above vaccination, help drive how we become stronger as a community as far as PPE?
Okay, for me, it's very simple. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the mitigation tools we have to combat COVID haven't changed in a year.
Yeah, rapid test,
social distancing, wearing the proper masks, etc. Okay, so if I'm correct in that statement, the only way to get better and make sure we stay open, make sure that we're protected, is to get better at using the tools. So stop shutting down. Trust the people that need to work and need to move forward, regardless if they're vaccinated or not, right? I mean, that's a whole nother discussion for another day. But, at the end of the day, we understand what's in front of us. We understand how to protect ourselves from it. We have tools that emphatically work if used correctly. Why not just reinforce what's needed, trust people to do the right thing, and they will. They really will.
Yeah. Amber, as a mother of 2 sons who are school aged, when you think about the mitigation steps and back to school in September, maybe just talk to us as a mom and some of the things that in terms of keeping your son safe that they're going to matter to you.
Yeah. Well, and again, and I love the idea of trust. I think people want to do the right thing, and most of us are doing the right thing. We're getting vaccinated as soon as we can. We are wearing masks. I still wear the medical grade masks because I think that's the thing that I believe in doing. But I mean, as a mom, like, watching my boys over the last year, I mean, for the last year, I think they've been in school for a sum total of 2 months. What that does to parents in the economy and teachers and the kids, like just watching their mental health. I think there comes a point where you need to weigh, and I think we've passed this point, the cost benefit of I mean, just what COVID is doing right now. And it's a really hard decision to make. But again, like I think to Steve's point, we have the right tools. We know what we need to do to mitigate this. So I'm very comfortable. I mean, pending what happens over the next couple of months. But a lot of us were vaccinated at that point in time. But I'm really excited for my kids to go back to school. I know my boys are incredibly excited. When Ford announced that they weren't going back for this last month of June, they were just heartbroken. So I'm really excited for things to start returning to some semblance of normal. And a lot of that does come into trust that we are going to work together as a community for the greater good of everyone.
Let me actually, why don't I, being the eternal optimist, going to share some really expected, I would say expected because I expected this, but kind of forecast for 2021. You're probably both aware that we've set all-time records for venture capital coming into Waterloo region in the last 6 months. Like incredible, it's in the billions.
1.1 in the last 30 days.
There you go, and Alvik announced a private equity deal, of 250 million today, a big infusion. My marketing team can't keep up with the news, with the buzz. Montreal International announced their best numbers in their history in 6 months. My organization, so when we pivoted, now let's remember we came into the pandemic on a relatively strong footing. Google announced a major expansion. Toyota was kind of firing on all cylinders, pun intended, more quality awards, continuing to expand. Steve, I know your business was good. Pandemic hits, we do what we need to do, and I know this is a PPE conversation, but a lot of pent-up investment demand, economic activity was essentially put on hold. My organization, Waterloo EDC, we average about 12 deals a year, or we have since inception, and roughly $200 million in inward investment, and about 1,000 jobs a year in that range. And so in addition to all this VC money coming in, the last 6 months, we have set an all-time record. We have landed 320 million and are at 18 deals already. We'll probably end the year at about 20 or 22. I have a number in the forecast. And it's in the category of, I was expecting a bounce back, but I wasn't expecting it to be this strong. And, but it continues to be a tale of two economies in many ways when you look at that, how quickly that bounced back, and then Main Street, small businesses, and in particular those in retail and hospitality. And we've been talking about maybe the Roaring 20s are kind of about to start a celebration of human contact, investment, and a great period ahead. Can you kind of walk us through your own thoughts and forecasts? Steve, you as a CEO and business leader of a growing company, and Amber, just in terms of the tech ecosystem, I think our members would welcome your thoughts on what you're seeing in 2021 and your thoughts about the next couple of years.
Sure. So for me, as I said before, in custom automation, we're many times on the front line of real innovative new products, new technology, new markets, right? So we've seen exponential expansions in our business. I mean, we've grown our revenue grew 50% this year alone. We're expanding into Europe. I just got back from Switzerland. I have a new venture. We're expecting to expand into Asia over the next year, and other markets and segments. So we're seeing that come into, like, as we lead into 2022. I would say that I expect a tailwind in new product development, new innovation, what really stimulates the work that I do to support it with automation, engineering, and technology. And we are, we're ramping up for that to support it. But at the same token, we can't deny that in the manufacturing industry up till now, there's been capacity hasn't contracted during the pandemic, so it's been available.
Right.
And then there's still supply chain issues and a bunch of things like that. So I still think it's a bit of a tougher challenge to combat some of these unknowns leading into 2022. But after that, I would concur that that's what you're going to see in specific to the industrial industries and worldwide markets. But I will also say that the majority of my work is export. The Canadian support of manufacturing piece of my business continually contracts, and it continually grows in other countries.
What's the breakdown? Are you like 20% Canada, 80 international, or is it even higher?
It is about that at the current moment, and the only reason it's even that is because we have a huge, a fairly significant stake in the nuclear industry for refurbishment.
Right.
The majority of that 20% is in nuclear, and so if it wasn't for that, I would be probably 5.
Amber, over to you. Put on that wizard's hat. Look ahead. What would you say for the members who are more focused on tech?
Yeah, well, I think tech and manufacturing go hand in hand. And I think right now in Waterloo region, like we're at the beginnings of a flywheel, and success really begets success. So like you start to see these mega deals being announced, all of this global big venture money coming in. The news stories get out. People are becoming more and more interested in Canada and Waterloo region in general. And then when you pair that with our favorable immigration policies and our somewhat affordable cost of living compared to some of the other global centers that are at the forefront of tech, I think we're only going to be growing. But again, we're still experiencing a lot of supply chain issues. Like you ask any of my tech friends if they can get their hands on silicon, and they'll just roll their eyes. And so it's just the supply chain constraints are just definitely not limited to PPE. It's something that is experienced across pretty much all sectors right now too. It's going to take some time for that to stabilize.
Well, I think Toyota could give us a masterclass, pun intended, on the chip shortage and how they were able to get around it. And interestingly, I was the ADM at the province when the tsunami hit and affected their supply chains in a really dramatic way. In about, if I had to remember, I think it was 2012. You learn, the expression, never let a good crisis go to waste. Well, Toyota certainly didn't, and they have not faced any of those challenges. So it's a testimony to kind of a learning by doing, but also kind of thinking about how you prepare for the future. We still have a few minutes left. What's the talent dynamic like for you, Steve? I mean, obviously, we're still faced with very significant skills and labor and talent shortages. Maybe talk about kind of the challenges that you're seeing and the success that you've had as a brand. Like I see on social media, Eclipse likes to highlight some of the roles that you have. Some of the very whether it's CNC operations or what an engineer does at Eclipse Automation, or what the process control. What are some of the things that you're doing to help promote talent and skilled trades?
So it's one of our largest single initiatives right now. As a growing company, our success is going to be based on how we grow, how we train people moving forward. Eclipse is really what we coin as a know-how company, right? Know-how is retained by experience, education, and most importantly, people. Okay. So one of the key initiatives that we have is obviously is training within. and really tapping into the education system to support the growth that we're looking at as we move forward. But in that, it's also there's another form of education that's required. So, you know, systematically, as time has went on in the last 20 years, industrial jobs haven't, let's say, been presented as this sexy product, and you know, so it's moved towards software and apps and nanotechnology, and those are all great things. Don't get me wrong, but you know, the thing is, you know, Eclipse Automation as a company, we, you know, our slogan is, you know, we design and build the future, and we really do. Like we're involved in the largest single battery, you know, manufacturing and change control jobs in the world. We're doing more than 5 different COVID test kits that are going to revolutionize the way testing is done and be prepared when we're out of this pandemic. You know, we've worked with companies that float balloons into the stratosphere. We get calls when a spaceship needs to be mass produced. Like, so at the end of the day, it's about looking at, you know, these trades, these jobs, these engineering roles for what they really are. And they support the future of our country and really society as a whole. And that's a big part of it, is to re-educate that, you know, these types of jobs are not only necessary for the future of this country and the world, but how they really are integral to supporting the initiatives as we move forward.
Got it.
Yeah, it's the same with my role at Communitech. I'm lucky enough to work with hundreds of Waterloo region companies in hardware, software, medtech. And right now, talent is, I think, the single biggest challenge for them in terms of their growth. So, I mean, it's just become so competitive globally now, especially now that we're so used to operating in a virtual way. A lot of positions, you don't need to be living in the city that you actually, that business is operating in. So, I mean, just to attract talent becomes increasingly challenging. So it comes down to wages and culture and just basically all of the things that will bring people into Waterloo region. But I think, again, we're really poised to take advantage and draw the talent in. But again, it's such a number one concern, I think, for Communitech and for all of the member companies.
Yeah, I'm so pleased that we chose Inventing the Future as our wordmark, tagline, and logo back in 2016. I thought it was a no-brainer. We had this board exercise where we were thinking about a call to action, something that was unique about Waterloo region that talked about knowledge-based industries and whether it was, you know, what's happening in process automation, quantum computing, you name it. And we landed on Inventing the Future, and you know, Steve and Amber, you're both great. You personify that, like you bring that to life, which is really cool. We still have about 5 minutes. You know, Steve, I'm going to give both you and Amber an opportunity to talk about whatever you want for like two minutes each. You know,
whatever we want.
Whatever we want. So I'm really taking a risk here. I have the tequila ready in case I need it. But
you might.
I might. I'm sure I will. But yeah, I mean, you know, if this, just use an opportunity to kind of reinforce messages that you've already delivered, or kind of what what opportunities you see for industry going forward. So why don't you start? So
I would say, I mean, just kind of in the light of not just PPE, but just manufacturing in general. You know, I started off by saying, you know, the foundation of that industry was built on a swamp, and what I really meant by that was you can't claim you have control of what the real issues are here unless you control the process, and the process is always foundational. Okay. So when I talk about, you know, innovation is and I've told you this before, is a very broadly used word, but it has 3 very key elements. One, there has to be a need for what you're bringing to market. So I think we can all agree that the need was definitely there during the pandemic for PPE, right? So there's no question whether or not that was a roadblock, because it wasn't. There has to be technical viability and the ability to create something. which again is there. It's being proven. You know, there was hundreds of people that stood up and did so. But then the final piece is commercial viability, and commercial viability can be blocked by many things. It can be blocked by, it can just be too expensive to align with consumers' expectations. It can be things like certification. It can be things like testing ability. All of these things. It can be education. There's an immense amount of reasons why that can not be viable. So, you know, if I had to reinforce a message, I would say that I travel all over the world, and I'm dealing with the top companies in the world that are creators, innovators, and we support them. We have a high degree of competence in the medical industry specifically to bring certifications to market and support that journey. And I would honestly say that, you know, our governments really need to realize that their role isn't the technical piece. Their role isn't to decide whether the consumer or the market needs it. Their role is to remove the red tape that's needed for us to actually create innovation. So I would ask them to stop stifling the innovation in this country by not concentrating where it's needed and start building, you know, not building on, and for that you have to admit that you did something wrong. You have to admit that we failed, which is okay, as long as you decide, okay, I'm not building in a swamp anymore. I'm going to build here, and this time I'm going to build a palace. And the thing that concerns me with this is we're so behind other countries, because I still travel and because I need to, because I have businesses all over the world. And I can tell you that the stuff I saw on my last trip in Europe is years advanced of what we're doing here in PPE and foundationally. And they've secured the ability to, we're behind. We need to catch up.
Yeah, so the clear message is we need to up our game. We can, but we need the government to basically allow, unleash innovation, unleash commercialization efforts, and actually support.
And give us the opportunities to enter supply chain. I mean, all these, we haven't talked about the contracts, but their bottom line is they're blocked. There's no way to get your product commercially to market to stimulate innovation. That's where we are, and that's end stop.
Strategic procurement, really important. Amber, over to you. You got 2.5 minutes. Go for it.
And you've given me free rein to talk about whatever I want. That's a dangerous thing to do, Tony. No. So I just worry about this being a huge missed opportunity. So, I mean, the pandemic, it's really shone a light on a lot of our shortcomings that we have within supply chain, within commercialization, within government policy. And so I worry we can take something like what was otherwise a really, really shitty year and turn it into positive and actually enact change. So I think, again, we need to lobby. We need to voice our opinions. The government needs to change policy to support our own standards, to support our own IP, and they need to be buyers. I know, Tony, you said, Steve, you said it's not a huge market necessarily, but I think when the Canadian government, they signal by what they're buying, and it's so frustrating to see in PPE and a lot of other verticals when manufacturers, they don't sell into Canada first. It almost becomes like the last market because there's so many barriers to get there. So I think the government really does need to become a buyer to be able to support and drive commercialization and sustainability.
I totally agree with you, Amber. I can tell you, I've asked some of my customers, why aren't you setting up in Canada? The first thing they say, it's too much red tape and not big market for me. Proportionate to the challenges to get into it. That's it. And so I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. So we need to be loud about making some top-down changes.
I agree.
Well, there's definitely more work to do here, this has been very clear, concise, and I would say memorable. And to that end, I just want to thank everyone who's watched today's live session. Some big action there. Again, this was really good, and it might be one of those things that we can circulate to government decision makers. Bravo, well done. Everyone, enjoy the rest of of the day, and thank you for being a part of this.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us for the Future of Resilient Manufacturing panel. It's my pleasure to introduce today's speakers. Moderating the discussion is Kenda Allen, Vice President Commercial Banking South Central Ontario for TD Bank, which covers Waterloo Region as well as Guelph and Stratford. She has 30 years of management and financial experience, having held various positions in commercial banking throughout Ontario and the lower mainland of BC. She is always engaged and supported communities that she's worked by volunteering, including locally with the Grand River Hospital Foundation, the Guelph and Abbotsford Chambers of Commerce, the Restorative Justice, Rotary, and amateur sport events. She's returned to the area in December of 2016. It doesn't seem like that, Kenneth, but it has been a while. A great partner of the Chamber, and she's proud to live and work in Waterloo Region. Our first panelist is Jennifer Saberis, founder and CEO of Simplify Supply Chain Solutions. Jennifer has deep expertise in logistics and experience working with companies of all sizes across a wide range of industries. Under Jennifer's leadership, Simplify delivers process-driven service excellence and best practice methods and tools for shipping and supply chain strategies to help build businesses. Under Jennifer's leadership, Simplify has grown to a business with over 100 vehicles on the road that deliver 10,000 packages per day across Ontario. And finally, Jeremy Hedges, President CEO of the Canadian Shield and Inksmith, and a recent recipient of a couple of awards at the Greater KW Chamber of Commerce Business Awards. So congratulations to him for that. Jeremy is an entrepreneur and business leader. In his first entrepreneurial endeavor, he founded Inksmith, an education technology company specializing in the delivery of 21st century technology and digital skills in the classroom. As CEO of Inksmith, Jeremy led the charge in pivoting the company to begin manufacturing critical PPE products at the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. Today, Canadian Shield is one of the largest producers of PPE in Canada and is leading a rapid shift towards advanced automation and sustainable materials in the medical device manufacturing industry. Operating as CEO of both ventures, Jeremy is a true leader on a mission to inspire innovation and impact within both of his operations. In addition to entrepreneurship, Jeremy has a keen interest in embracing social responsibility and building environmental sustainability for future generations. So with that, please join me in welcoming Jennifer Saberis, Jeremy Hedges, and Kenda Allen. And I think it's right over to you, Kenda. Take it away. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Ian, for that introduction, and welcome everybody to our session today. As Ian mentioned, the theme for this discussion is around the future of resilient manufacturing. And if you were in the previous discussion session, they were talking about supply chain management, this is a step off from that and continuing that conversation. I know I'm a bit optimistic after I heard Pierre's keynote speech earlier today when he looks at the rebound of the economy being at 6% growth as was projected. And we know as well that, $1 in every $5 in this region actually comes from manufacturing. So it's a very strong topic and something that we really should talk about. And thanks for our speakers today that have joined me, 2 local business owners who have been very successful in this market, and we're pleased to have them share their time with us today. So I'm going to start with Jennifer. Your business, Simply Supply Chain Solutions, relatively new, but you've already had great success, Jennifer, and you've experienced growth within the business. So just wondered if you could give the audience a bit of background on your business and where your successes come from.
Well, thanks very much for the introduction. Well, Simplify, I founded it in 2016, and we started as a consulting company with a focus on more efficient and effective supply chain. In 2018, we realized that during the initial phase, it became apparent that there was a need to implement more efficient transportation solutions for our customers. In 2018, we launched our first vehicle in the Tri-Cities, our first delivery vehicle. And from there, we just expanded to over 100 vehicles in 2021. And also in 2021 to help the customers that we have and the new ones that we've gained, we opened up a distribution center in the Kingston area to allow our customer to have more geographical range. So that's the story of Simplify.
Thanks, Jennifer. And Jeremy, most people are familiar with the Canadian Shield and the quick pivot that you made from education to PPE and achieved substantial growth over the past. Aren't familiar, maybe if you could just speak a little bit about your background and how the Canadian Shield idea came to be.
Thanks, Kenda, and congrats, Jennifer. So last March, we had a local doctor office and let us know that Waterloo region was short 10,000 face shields for our frontline healthcare workers. At first, this really started as a donation effort. We unboxed 3D printers, uncrated laser cutters, and started making shields to fill that local need. And that problem, the scope and scale of it quickly grew. In about a month, we had orders for another 12 million face shields and opened a 50,000 square foot facility here in North Waterloo. So we're just on Bridge and Northfield here. And, you know, over the past, God, what's it been, 18 months, we've gone through this pretty incredible transition of really scaling up face shields. I think in total, we made 16 million of them. Our team grew from under 10 to 330 at our peak. And obviously we've trickled down from there. We've invested a lot in developing technology. So, you know, a lot of folks have started manufacturing PPE here in Canada. We've taken the approach of not just making the PPE, but designing, you know, new ways to make those medical masks and face shields, patenting that technology and making that technology available to other players here in Canada and around the world. So we're a bit of a hybridized business now. There's some unique challenges in the PPE industry here in Canada, and I've spoken pretty publicly about that. And I know many others in our industry have as well. So it's been a real, lightning course in Canadian manufacturing and the ins and outs of procurement. And we're working to make some reforms that I think will have a good impact for our industry, but also for advanced manufacturing here in the region as a whole. We need to align procurement with economic development, and ultimately, if we're successful in medical devices, then I think hopefully we can share that success with other businesses here in the region and across Canada.
Yeah, that's great, Jeremy. You're right, the impact that it has over the whole region. And as Jennifer mentioned, she started in 2016 with her company, and then 18 saw an additional need to have vehicles. So maybe Jennifer, if you could, with that continuing to evolve, what are some of the lessons that you've learned or that you've heard from your customers? What have they learned through that pandemic? As we always say, we don't want to let a good crisis go to waste. So what are we taking away from what we've learned over the last 18 months?
I think a lot of people have seen, especially in the delivery area, logistics and transportation, just the amount with the usual providers that they had, kind of the lack of service. For us, I know we jumped pretty big in 2020. We delivered, I think, 2.1 million packages in all of 2020. And in 2021, to date, we're at 2.5 million packages. And with that growth, we still focus on delivery excellence. So even at that 2.5 million packages delivered, our success rate is at 99.54%, which is imperative for businesses to grow and to ensure that they're getting their product to their customers in a timely manner. One of the frequent concerns that we saw with the customers before we became their provider was the lack of timely service and service excellence. Businesses wanted to raise their profile and to provide their customers, or the ability to provide their customers their product in a timely manner. And whether that be same day or next day service, they just didn't find it in the transportation that was currently available at that time. And especially with the brick and mortar stores, When the pandemic originally hit, they wanted to get their product to their customers, but not just in the Tri-Cities and not just into the GTA, but all over across Ontario. And with that, we worked with our customers to help them, pivot their business and get to their customers, where kind of traditional delivery services, it was more like, this package is going to get here in 3 days, where we worked with our customers to get their packages to other geographical markets. And that allowed us in 2021 to open up our distribution center in Kingston. So that was one of the largest lessons that we've heard from our customers. That was one of the biggest pain points for our customers at the time.
So they were saying speed to market. Do you think during this pandemic that the speed to market changed from where we were previously, or expectations from customers?
Absolutely. More people got used to the home delivery, next day service, because originally when this started, everything was pretty much shut down and we weren't getting things for months or weeks. So I think the expectation has changed because they see that there are services like ours that you can do next day service across Ontario and even bigger geographics. So I think the consumer mindset on what the expectations are for transportation and just supply chain in general has really shifted.
And I guess that's the question about what is the new normal, if we could say that. Is there a new normal? Where do you see it in the future, right? As the economy opens up more locally in Ontario, do you see greater demand or a bit of a shrinkage?
Well, I think that, there's some changes that has happened during the pandemic that are here to stay, and that's not necessarily a negative. It's just the expectation of the consumers have changed. And so as businesses, where it's transportation, supply chain, manufacturing, we've had to adjust to provide service excellence to our customers and to pivot our business to see how we can better serve our customers. I think, and with Jeremy with providing, just the mass quantity of PPE, I think people, the customer has really seen the importance of having local supply chain, local manufacturer, transportation companies. I think that, home deliveries, coming, you order, day before and the next day it's here. It's not just for the massive companies. There's local companies that can provide that service as well. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways. And like I said, not for a negative, but, us as supply chain providers in the manufacturing and logistics field, being able to provide that support to our customers and the customers knowing that it's available.
Excellent. So just shifting over to Jeremy, as a manufacturer, you mentioned in your earlier comments about challenges to supply chain. And what would you say are the main challenges that you anticipate as you want to continue to grow your business? And second part of that, where would you see opportunities for growth in Canada?
Yeah, I think the main challenge for our industry is the current setup in which healthcare purchases their products. So if you're not familiar, the healthcare system purchases through third-party entities that accumulate all of that buying power and then centralize that in contracts. So currently in the Canadian market, there's about 3 entities that control the entire market. You've got Mohawk Medbuy, Plexus, and HealthPro, and each of those major GPO and SSOs have contracts that last anywhere from 3 to 7 years. So for a Canadian company that's entered the space, for all of us, it means that we can't participate in selling in healthcare currently. We've innovated, we've invested in developing biodegradable masks, and through that process, we've been able to get innovation contracts which give us some access to the market. What they call it in the industry is a hunting license. So essentially we can go hospital to hospital and sell our product based on merit, and we are cost competitive with the product that they're bringing in from overseas. But unfortunately today, even though we learned some hard lessons, I'd say that 95 to 98% of products going into hospitals as it relates to PPE is all from overseas. And it's not because we're not price competitive or that we can't deliver product. It's that there's contracts. It's a stroke of a pen, unfortunately. So that's been a really interesting challenge for the sector. And I think, there was a story about some of our layoffs, and that's kind of a consistent story across the board in Canada. And we're hoping that, as we come into election season and the Ontario government starts to transition this purchasing to a more centralized provincial entity, that we see better access. And obviously there's a glut in inventory as well. We kind of panic bought, I think, provincially, federally, and otherwise. And now I'm hearing that there's between 6 and 12 months of inventory in different places for different hospital units. So it's a very unique environment to operate a manufacturing business in, because before we were in a place where we simply couldn't make enough. And then it was almost like a cliff hit, and the reverse was true. We couldn't find access where we needed it. And that pivot point was where supply chains from overseas normalized. And, probably Jennifer's hearing a lot about this in her business and industry, but container prices, like freight, is the most expensive I think it's ever been. A container used to cost us $3,000 to bring in from China. Now it's about $18,000 at the very high end, and a gradient there under. So I really wonder what that's going to do to other sectors, and particularly for folks that bring in bulkier items like fridges and appliances and things that are just bulkier without the weight. So anyway, we've had some interesting challenges on the procurement side, and we've tried along the way to lobby the correct government agencies to make the changes we need to have access, but haven't gotten there yet. So that's an ongoing challenge for us. In terms of opportunities we see in the future, we do have the biodegradable mask and some access there, and it'll take some time for us to really get that to become a standard in Canadian hospitals, but we'll get there and we'll claw our way in. But we've developed some really special technology, and I think that we have a scalable market here in Canada and abroad. There's a quite diverse manufacturing sector in the US that are making masks and respirators and gowns. And our tech will fit well with those companies that have been set up there. And I'm sure we'll find good markets in Europe. So in some ways, we're going to become a bit of a hybrid business, a product manufacturer and an automation company and consulting agency.
Great, and that speaks to you've had to be agile, and ramping up and then reducing it. Similar in maybe Jennifer's business as well. So maybe I'll go to Jennifer first on this question about talent. And as the late baby boomers are retiring, and that gap with immigration, not as many immigrants over the last year, just given the impacts on the border. The war on talent, as I would call it. Where do you see that? And do you have challenges finding talent, and any impacts you would say as far as automation in either your business or your customer's business? Maybe I'll ask both of you, but I'll start with Jennifer.
For us, talent is quite difficult to get, and when we had to ramp up significantly, it was tough. That was probably one of the biggest growing pains for us. Similar to Jeremy, we went from a company of under 10 to over 200 quite quickly, which was fantastic. And I think it taught a lot of lessons to different businesses, whether it be in manufacturing or supply chain, but just business as a whole. I think the pandemic taught us that we could scale up and that it was possible. So it gave a lot of positive to different businesses. But back to the question regarding talent, yeah, it has been difficult. But I think, again, if you're giving a positive culture, you have great benefits, room to grow within the business. I think, there's a lot of gray that you can't really predict or control. But what you can control is kind of the culture that you bring in. Our focus is having our own employees and not necessarily going down a different route. So again, yeah, it has been one of the biggest pain points for us. But we pivot, we adapt, we bring people in because we have, like I said, locations across Ontario. We cross-train, we try to bring additional people in, incentives, things like that. But when it comes to automation, I mean, there's always room for that, especially in both of our areas. Automation has really taken over. I'm a little bit more old school, where I believe in having the people there and building the local economy and people having secure jobs. So I'm probably not the best person to ask about that, but there's always room for automation, but there's always room for the human being touch. And like I said, I think one of the largest things that we've seen, or businesses have seen on my side from logistics and transportation, was when they're shipping their stuff and it says, hey, it's going to be there the next day, and you search it online and you don't know where it is. You call, you speak to a machine. Where, a lot of the customers that came over to us, you have that personal touch. You have a customer care person that knows exactly where your package is. And we continue to focus on that as we continue to grow. And I think a lot of businesses maybe need to rethink that as well. But yeah, so that would be kind of my comment towards the talent and the automation. But I think, especially with the pandemic, a lot of people now know what supply chain is, where before it was kind of like we just expected our apple to be there. And, a lot of people didn't really think that either they didn't have the knowledge of what supply chain was, so they didn't realize that the amazing jobs that are within manufacturing, supply chain, and all those sectors. So I believe you're going to see more and more people getting into this field. One thing that it's really shown us is the sustainability of supply chain and manufacturing within Ontario, that our jobs, how important they are. So I do believe even though we have a shortage right now, I believe that we're going to have more and more people entering the field.
I agree with you, Jennifer, and the actual awareness, I think, is a key thing of what people do, how they fit in the supply chain. You often know that people go to work every day, but you don't actually ask them what they do. In this scenario, it's actually made it more prevalent, and who knew that a computer chip affected so many things, right? that the unintended consequences is what I've heard people say. But Jeremy, what your thoughts on manufacturing talent and innovation talent as well in your business?
Yeah, we are in the automation supercluster here in Waterloo, so there's quite a pool, but it's very competitive. You've got the big players like Eclipse and ATS and Systematics down the street. So there's a lot of automation houses here in the region. So to get the folks you want, you've got to be competitive and make sure that you're selling the dream. That being said, I don't know that a big talent pool for automation is ubiquitous in Canada. I think that we probably will have shortages, and that's why we do the work that we do in education. We start teaching coding and 3D modeling as early as grade 1. And our real goal is to create a continuum of learning from K to 12 that kids learn about technology in a purpose-driven environment. They learn about real-world challenges like deforestation, and maybe they build an automated tree seeder that'll drive and drop a seed every 10 centimeters. So we've designed these series of activities that align to Ontario and otherwise curriculum in math and science, that hopefully we start building a bigger, more diverse pipeline in that technology talent pool. And for us, because a big part of our focus day to day has been developing the automation. Like what we've designed is a system that takes raw material, big roll of polypropylene, converts that into a mask, uses a vision system to check for about 24 different defects every half a second, and then if a mask is bad, a vacuum sucks that out and shoots it away so that it doesn't come out the machine. And then a box is erected and 50 masks are packed neatly into that box and shifted down. And we've been able to do that in a really cost-effective way. So we've got, we're basically getting the efficiency out of one of our lines that you would out of 2 of the imported systems. So we've developed a lot. And I think that as the industry stabilizes and these players are looking at their bottom line and how they carry forward in the industry and stay competitive with international supply chains, they're going to need to automate. We're in a penny business. We don't necessarily have the luxury of being complacent with our technology. And I think, this is probably the case for a lot of, high volume mass manufacturing opportunities. If you want to do that in Canada, and if you want to make that stay, you need to automate. And I think we're going to see a sweep of changes. We're doing some consulting with other folks on, we're doing like kitting robots, so a vision system that looks at a bin container and picks and packs for a partner of ours. So we've done some consulting as well in this space, and I think that there's a lot of room to grow in automation in Ontario and in the manufacturing sector. And hopefully, at the same time, we can build the right pipeline of kids that grow up to become those engineers and designers and electricians and so on.
That's a great point, Jeremy. You know, I recently heard, the focus in the education system in Ontario, where teachers are requirements to have math and background in math for teaching. When you talk about your needs, when you're hiring, what are the students actually studying and what are they coming out with? So very valuable. Just want to remind our audience, if you do have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat on the session side, and I can ask Jeremy and Jennifer on your behalf. So we do have a few minutes left, and so my final question, but opportunities for Jeremy and Jennifer, just to give us, start with Jennifer, what do you see as the opportunities for your industry or the manufacturing industry as a whole in this region, and where do you go from here as far as challenges that might be out there?
Well, I think there's a lot of opportunity that this pandemic has really shown us and moving forward out of it. One is, I think a lot of people have seen is local. What's local? Our local providers, manufacturers, really being aware of that. I think that, again, especially with Jeremy, just being able to provide our community with what they need. It doesn't necessarily need to come from overseas, and especially when that pipeline is really clogged, you see the importance of localized manufacturing and supply chain. So I think that has been one of the biggest lessons, and I hope that moving forward, that consumers, customers continue to use local. Just even when other markets open up, it's still the importance of really taking what we've learned and not getting amnesia quite quickly after when everything is opened. We provide fantastic quality, again, in our manufacturing sector or supply chain as a whole. Especially with the Tri-Cities, we have phenomenal manufacturing and businesses that can supply us on our everyday needs. And I hope that we focus on the local businesses that were here for us when we were in a pretty tight spot, and continue to use those services, because it's not just about, or I should say, I think the most important factor is who was there for us in our biggest pain points. So I would say that's one of the biggest takeaways in our industry. And just across the whole, and thinking outside the box. I mean, I think, we have customers that, they were brick and mortar, and, let's say they were a tea room in Waterloo, and their focus was only those customers. Well, now that Waterloo tea room now delivers all across Ontario. And I think businesses should continue to grow and think outside of the box and continue to pivot and work with partners that can help you follow through with growing your business. And I think when people are open to change and open to pivot, I think you have a lot of great opportunities. Finding a partner for that opportunity is also great. So I think that's the biggest takeaway is, maybe some businesses that came into, again, brick and mortar, but being able to grow their business to limits that they didn't even think was possible. So, like I said, not all the things that we've learned during the pandemic is a negative. Highlight on supply chain, which I think is amazing. One of the most important things on, just the awareness of where did that apple come from? How did we get there? All the different people that are part of that supply chain. I think the awareness is really going to be great for our industry.
I totally agree with you, Jennifer. And you think about people are more aware and looking at labels where this comes, who are actually searching for it, because it's important to people now. Jeremy, thoughts on the future and where the industry's going?
Yeah, I think I've touched on this education piece, but I think there's a real opportunity now to make that sea change. A couple of years ago, the new crazy thing in high schools was that grade 9 students had one-to-one devices. Everybody had a laptop. Now that's happening in kindergarten. So we can actually start teaching them one-to-one coding and all of these things to build that bigger pipeline that we need and give them a broader set of opportunities. Like the digital divide is a very real thing. And then up until now, because of necessity, I don't think we've solved that problem. I mean, there's still access to Wi-Fi and other issues, but I think that having access to those skills and those careers is a huge, huge driver for those kids and is going to be a driver for the future of our industry. Automating dull, dirty, and dangerous jobs, I think that that's going to be an important part of how we re-envision manufacturing here. Domestic manufacturing is good for the economy. It's good for the planet. You pay more money for the same product, sure, but there's a ratio there. When you're keeping those dollars here in the economy, that's coming right back to us. In our example of masks, we're cost competitive. We are 10 cents for a level 2 mask, and so is it from China. And to me, that means that we're far more advantageous because 8 cents of that dollar is staying here in the Canadian economy. And I think that's the kind of mindset that we need to keep present, or we're going to experience the same problems again when we have another pandemic or climate change. We saw 2 weeks ago in Abbotsford, the wildfires and the heat waves. We've got some other serious crises ahead, and I think we need to take a look at how we make our industry more sustainable and planet friendly, and there's going to be real opportunities in that space. I think if Canada plays this pandemic recovery smartly, we're going to invest in industries and technologies that take on those big issues and capitalize on them, because ultimately I think that's going to be the greatest economic opportunity in the next 20 and 30 years, and is the future of our planet and people. So that's what I see, and that's what I hope to continue participating in.
Great comments, Jeremy. I totally agree. I was going to mention it. I said we would need another hour at least to talk about the environmental and the social impact, but very, very topical today. And as we do watch what's happening in the Western provinces, living out there for 4 years, like very close to my heart as well when I watch what's happening there, the devastation with the fires. So very critical. We appreciate your comments today, but Ian, or the rumor mill is, and I'll throw this question out, we'll do a mini poll with Jeremy and Jennifer, the thoughts and the rumors of the economy opening up in Ontario. There's thoughts or discussion about going full wide open next month, from manufacturing or related manufacturing companies. Any thoughts on that? And where we'd come in and what would the impacts be if positive or negative? Jennifer?
Oh, that's a tricky question. So, I mean, taking a step back and kind of looking at where we've been, past behaviors till future behaviors. And I think we have to be very mindful of the plan that we implement with reopening Ontario to ensure that we don't take one step back one step forward and 10 steps back. My concern with the full opening in a month's time, I'm not sure if that's necessarily the right steps. I know as business owners and people that colleagues that I have that are business owners, you kind of want to jump at the opportunity to get your business open again. And I would feel the same way. However, I think that we really need to take a step back and see what's good for the country, for Ontario. Because what we don't want is now we're going into another lockdown. And if there is another lockdown imposed, will people adhere to it? Right? So it's very tricky. I think if there is going to be a full reopening, then there needs to be, I don't know how we can fully open up in a month's time with all the precautions that we need to eliminate the spread.
Jeremy, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I'm not a scientist, and I'd have to lean on what the public health folks are saying. But it's really tough to sit in my chair because we've been able to stay open, and I know there's so many folks that are chomping at the bit to get back to normal and try to recover for lost time. But I got to echo Jennifer, like there's a lot of variables there, and if we end up going back into lockdown after all this could really kill people financially, and we don't need that stress and frustration. So I think whatever we do, it should be precautious. We've made it this far, tacking on another month of stage 3 or the whatever we are. I don't think that's so unreasonable. I think if you look at the requirements of stage 3, wearing masks in public, somewhat limited gatherings. I mean, you can have 25 people indoors. Like it's hard to know. And there's the new variant and a lot of factors there. But I think it will be interesting to see what the numbers look like after we enter stage 3 as a province, and hopefully they make an informed decision when they have good information and they take the most precautious path forward, so that we hedge our bets, because we don't want to do this again. Nobody does. I'm really ready to go back to normal, but I'm not willing to sacrifice another lockdown scenario. So, yeah.
Great, thank you both for your comments. And it is there's no roadmap for it, and we continue to work with it. And your insights, I'm sure, are very valuable with everybody out there as we work to reopen the economy and get to that 6% growth that Pierre talked about. I want to thank Jennifer and Jeremy for their time today, their candor, their sharing of their experiences in their companies, great examples of success stories in our region that make the region of Waterloo such a great place to live and work in. Thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the session.
Hi, my name is Kevin Lambert, and I'm a tax partner with Deloitte and the market leader for the Waterloo region. We're happy to be the founding sponsor of the 2021 Manufacturing Summit, and I'm thrilled to be introducing our closing keynote speaker for today's event. Robin Baines is a senior manager, technology strategy and architecture with Deloitte. Robin has over 20 years of industry and consulting experience developing strategy and delivering large-scale programs in digital, data analytics, Internet of Things, and enterprise architecture across multiple industries, including telecommunications, consumer and industrial products, financial services, energy and resources, and the public sector. Robin has extensive experience serving clients for technology strategy and architecture, digital transformation innovation management, and technology experimentation studies and pilots. Robin leads Deloitte Canada's industrial IoT smart factory practice and helps clients unlock value across the end-to-end digital value chain, from sensor endpoints to advanced analytics insights. He holds a Bachelor of Engineering from McMaster University and an MBA in Management Consulting and Investment Banking from the Rotman School of Management at the University of Toronto. Following his keynote on smart manufacturing, Robin will be participating in a live fireside chat in the sessions area of the platform. Please join me in welcoming Robin Baines.
Thanks for that introduction today, Kevin. And I'm happy to be here. Once again, my name is Robin Baines. I'm a senior manager in Deloitte's smart manufacturing practice, and I have the opportunity to work with clients in the industrial industries, helping them start up, scale up, or scale out their smart factory digital journeys. I'm looking forward today and really excited to be here with you to share perspectives on the future of manufacturing and how Industry 4.0 is evolving the supply chain and giving rise to smart factory manufacturing operations. So I'll start off by sharing some perspectives on the future of manufacturing. Industrial players are investing in Industry 4.0 capabilities to make sure that they're protected against digital disruption. And they're finding ways to seek new growth through innovation and also find ways to simplify their global supply chain manufacturing operations and supply chain networks themselves. There's 3 megatrends that have started to emerge that are driving and shaping the future of manufacturing. The first one is, from a digital disruption perspective, IoT. IoT is bringing forth the explosion of data that's creating a whole new set of opportunities, at the same time creating new sources of disruption for industrial organizations, because they're enabling these organizations to operate at performance levels that were never before seen or possible. The IoT market size, just to give a stat, is expected to rise from anywhere from $250 billion to $1.5 trillion over the next several years. This is an impressive CAGR of approximately 25%. Secondly, there's significant advancements that are happening in 3D printing, automation, and robotics. And these capabilities are changing the way that organizations are designing industrial products, as well as enabling and running through manufacturing execution processes. This is all being enabled through advanced manufacturing. And finally, cybersecurity. As software starts to consume industrial processes and control processes, the amount of risks and vulnerabilities are starting to multiply. And this is becoming a board level imperative. Whether it's enterprise IT applications for industrial control systems, or smart connected products, security is a critical issue. To give another stat over here, the cybersecurity market is forecast to increase from roughly $160 billion to approximately $430 billion. Not as big as the growth expected in IoT, but it is still quite impressive with a CAGR of approximately 12 to 15% from now until 2028. So that was megatrend number one. Megatrend number two is on the growth and innovation imperative. Organizations are looking at ways to create new business models, and a lot of them are building businesses that require solutions that happen to be digital-based or analytics-based. However, they are running up against challenges because coming up with these capabilities successfully is proving to be a struggle. So organizations are really looking for ways to build up their R&D capabilities and make them more effective, because they are looking for new sources of revenue and growth. And the third mega trend is global network optimization, where after several decades of globalization of these organizations, where costs have gone up and complexities have gone up, they're now looking to simplify their supply chain management processes. They're looking for ways to onshore capabilities and also build in resilience and operate and redesign their operating models to become more proactive and predictive through business operations planning, as an example. Or looking to optimize their manufacturing operations by building a link between their factory OT systems and their enterprise IT systems themselves. So this whole concept of OT-IT convergence is also coming to life. So these mega trends are requiring manufacturers to really transform themselves as they start to embark on their Industry 4.0 journey. But what is Industry 4.0 exactly? Well, back in 2011, there was a project that kicked off by the German government. It was a high-tech strategy project to really describe the way that organizations can use computer systems and connected networks and cyber-physical systems and high bandwidth and high performance computing to really start to connect the manufacturing assets inside of their organizations from the OT world to the IT world, to really start to share information and start to draw upon insights to create more intelligent manufacturing operations. All this to drive up efficiencies and improve profitability. So while Industry 4.0 has been viable for the last several years, it hasn't been really that widespread when it came to experimenting and realizing value from these capabilities. There are different organizations that have at the same time started down this journey and started with experimentation and are now starting to realize value from their projects that are driving up efficiencies. With these capabilities from Industry 4.0, organizations are starting to find ways to integrate their business processes from a horizontal perspective. So anything coming in from the raw goods, looking at manufacturing, distribution, and after-sales support. They're also finding ways to increase connectivity from a vertical sense, connecting the shop floor to the top floor. And all of these capabilities are being enabled by the digital core. Digital core composes of advanced analytics, IoT, cobots, blockchain, all these types of characteristics and technologies that are really allowing organizations to start to blur the lines between the physical worlds and digital worlds through these exponential technologies. So in a nutshell, Industry 4.0 is enabling businesses to share information horizontally and vertically to improve business operations and profitability through these digital capabilities that are at the core. The holy grail of The holy grail of Industry 4.0 is combining the digital and physical worlds as one through the physical, digital, physical loop. And this could be across assets, could be processes and networks. And it's not to create a digital record of the asset itself, it's to create a digital replica that evolves over time because there's a continuous amount of information flowing into the asset. It has a life cycle, it communicates with and interacts with other digital assets. So it's more than just a digital record of the physical entity, it's more of a digital twin. And this digital twin is used to manage a twin process, a twin asset, or a twin network in an optimized way. So to create this digital to physical loop, there are 3 key steps that need to take place. The first one being digitization, establishing a digital record of the actual physical entity, whether it's an asset or a process. Number 2 is digitalization, which is really working with the math in the data model that's been provided by the physical asset itself in the digital world and the digitized asset itself, creating that digital model, applying some mathematics to it so that some sort of action can be translated into the physical world. And that's step number 3, which is generating that movement into the physical world. So these three things are what are needed to allow an organization to really start to take advantage and start taking their first steps towards Industry 4.0. And it's an absolute game changer for those organizations that are serious about building these capabilities in the smart factory. Next, to make this physical to digital to physical loop a little bit more tangible, I'll provide a quick overview of 12 innovative capabilities that are driving Industry 4.0 into the smart factory. Of course, there's going to be more capabilities out there on the market, but I'm just going to focus on these ones over here. So think about sensors or wearables, sensors on a machine, sensors on a truck, a GPS system, maybe a vision system that's scanning the physical environment. That's collecting information about the environment itself, what's going on in the physical world, and pulling that information and combining this information with other systems that happen to be on within the enterprise, not only from inside your organization, but also outside your organization. Now, with this digitized information, you start to build models on this information, like whatever kind of signal transformations you might want to do is applying math to it. In a nutshell, cognitive computing, AI. And at the end, once you have this model developed, the next course of action is to apply the digital model to the physical world, driving some sort of change and movement, such as using a 3D printer to create a product or a part according to some specifications that you have, or using robotics to drive manufacturing in a guided, paperless way without any human intervention. Or finally, looking at autonomous guided vehicles where they're used to move materials within inside a plant facility, manufacturing operations, whether it's the raw material, the intermediate material, or a finished good product. Again, all without any sort of human intervention at all. So the question becomes, and you may be thinking about, is how real are these capabilities and technologies today? And who's actually thinking about using them? Well, the answer to the first question is that these technologies are very real. They're proven and they are generating value for organizations, both the top line and the bottom line. They're no longer in the realm of startup or experimentation. And to answer the second question, who's thinking about using these capabilities? Well, last year, we at Deloitte conducted our 3rd annual global survey with industrial leaders to understand how they view Industry 4.0. And these leaders were C-suite executives across 19 countries, maybe 20, and there were over 2,000 of them that were providing their viewpoints on how they expect Industry 4.0 to unfold. So what I'll do at this time is share some insights from this report, with the first one being that across the board, there's a strong belief by the C-suite leaders that Industry 4.0 is absolutely critical for long-term business success. Now, having said that, only 2/3 of these leaders have said that their organizations have a comprehensive Industry 4.0 strategy. And what they're doing is they're moving towards it with ad hoc approaches. Of those, 10% of the leaders said that their organizations have a comprehensive Industry 4.0 strategy in place, and that they're reaching across the entire organization here. So not too many leaders have a strategy in place yet, but those that do, they are finding a broad impact across the organization. And we know that from our research and also from the work that we do, that organizations that have a comprehensive Industry 4.0 strategy end up having a broader impact across the organization and are usually better fared to outperform their competitors across the board, whether it's innovating with new products and services, whether it's having better capabilities to integrate technologies, or even having the ability to better manage, retain, and develop talent that is required for Industry 4.0. So there's a number of insights here. And we've also found that of those organizations that have a comprehensive Industry 4.0 strategy, 90% of them have reported that their annual return and growth on revenue is at least 5%. So a lot here. And in a short summary here, Industry 4.0 is believed to be absolutely critical to long-term business success. And those with a comprehensive strategy have enabled themselves to success that allows them to outperform those that don't have a comprehensive strategy in place. So that's number one. Number two is around digital disruption. 51% of those executives feel that Industry 4.0 is a top strategic priority investment to protect their organizations from digital disruption. And they anticipate that the technologies that are going to have the most profound impact on their organizational operations happen to be the ones on the left-hand side here, the big four: IoT, AI, cloud, and big data analytics. Now, these foundational capabilities are actually integrative. You have to have a asset itself that generates some sort of data, whether it's a machine or a person or a process. That information goes through a network, it gets stored in a platform, and then somebody starts to consume that information. So they're actually very, very integrative. But at the same time, they're also very integrative with the technologies on the right-hand side here across the board, such as edge computing, blockchain, 3D printing, and advanced robotics. So you can think of all these capabilities as a holistic, business-enabling technology architecture. And finally, what I'll do is I'll touch upon talent and skills insights from this report. In order to run Industry 4.0 capabilities, you need to be able to design, build, and test with Industry 4.0 skill sets. And right now, because there is a gap in the skill sets needed for Industry 4.0, the CXO leaders have committed to ensuring that their organizations are developing towards these capabilities, whether it's through some sort of training, some sort of lifelong learning activities for Industry 4.0, on-the-job skill sets, skilling up. 60% of them have actually said that understanding what skills are needed for Industry 4.0 is also another top strategic priority. Now, there was a lot of other rich insights from this report that you can pull out. And what I'll do is I'll recommend that you download the report and read that report. The other area that Industry 4.0 is having an implication on is how it's evolving digital supply chains and supply networks. Over the last 20 years, we use the SCORE model to sense customer demand from plan, make, source, and deliver. And it was expanded over time to include other aspects such as support, after-sales support, after-sales support and aftermarket support, and product development. Now, this traditional supply chain model was largely linear, as you can see, and it was very, very oriented towards functional excellence. At the same time, though, there was some collaboration that was happening between the different functions, such as the after-sales support team providing inputs and issues into releasing new product features or providing inputs on what bugs needed to be resolved as the development teams iterated their products out, or maybe the manufacturing teams feeding in yields back into the production planning team. So there was some collaboration happening, but there wasn't much. This is a largely functionally oriented on excellence model and very, very linear. And also focused on making sure that it was focused on how products were flowing versus how information was flowing from one step to the other. Now, if you look at the right-hand side, Industry 4.0 is really reshaping the existing capability to the exponential technology that we spoke about earlier, IoT, big data, analytics, cloud, and they're all sitting at the digital core. The new model here is all about how organizations become more connected to not just their immediate nodes, but also adjacent nodes and nodes that happen to be on the far reaches of the network itself. So it's a digitally supply chain that's connected through a network itself. Now, we've organized the functions in circles, and we might have renamed the functions themselves. They may look at it and think, it doesn't look that different. But this model here is really, really focused on collaboration and also really, really focused on leveraging and building digital capabilities to become and operate more competitively. And not only that, but it's got this whole end-to-end supply chain view versus looking at it from your own enterprise and only looking at your direct customers and your direct suppliers. The digital supply network also has a lot of agility built into it. There's a lot of real-time information flowing between the different nodes. Information is continuously flowing from the production assets to the human resources, processes, algorithms, so that people and assets can make the most optimized decisions in real time. Think about, for instance, a customer, a downstream customer that decides to increase their production. And then at the same time, the supplier is able to also ramp up their production in lockstep because they've got APIs between the two systems or integration points, and the two organizations are sharing information and providing visibility to one another. So there's very, very little supply side or demand side disruption or delay. So given the interconnected nature of this digital supply network, you can see that at any given point, any node can communicate with any other node, and it has a pretty good sense of what's happening across the entire network. So at this point, what I'll do is I'll zoom in to the node on the right-hand side here, near the bottom on the digital supply network, on the smart factory. And I'll start off by providing a brief definition of what the smart factory is. The smart factory is a factory that addresses daily production execution, and it connects an organization's digital supply network. At the same time, it's a production facility that employs technology such as IoT, Internet of Things, and artificial intelligence to drive increased value, both within its walls and beyond its walls. A smart factory is a factory that connects, collects, and analyzes production data. It augments human intelligence with machine intelligence, and it drives better insights and sustains step change improvements in performance, quality, and safety. If I was to drill down into a smart factory even more, which I'll do, it's a model that really applies to the manufacturing operations of different organizations in the industrial industries. The smart factory is a model that allows these organizations to become more digitized, and at the same time, for most of the organizations in Canada, if not North America, they need to be moving towards these smart factory capabilities and technologies. If you look at the smart factory itself, we've seen a number of characteristics and attributes emerge over the last several years, and they are starting to accelerate more rapidly. First of all, it's connected, whether it's a production asset, it's a process, or it happens to be a human doing some sort of productivity type enhancement, such as maintenance. All these different attributes and assets within the factory are connected. Information is flowing from the actual source through a network, to a data platform, and it's being there provided to be able to be consumed by somebody who needs to make a decision off that information. And all this information, as it's flowing, and the assets, they're all secure. Secure from the point of transmission to where it's being stored and who's able to look at it and who's able to not look at it. It's all got to be secure, because cybersecurity, as we mentioned earlier, is a board level issue. At the same time, this information is very, very transparent. It's being democratized. It's being shared across the organization so that everybody can make effective decisions and timely decisions. The smart factory itself is also becoming a lot more proactive. Proactive in the sense that you're able to run a lot more what if scenarios. What if you can anticipate issues and at the same time take some actions ahead of time to predict some sort of outcomes and take an action before it actually happens to prevent some sort of downtime, such as predictive maintenance type capabilities? What if you can move from preventative maintenance to predictive maintenance type capabilities, to predictive maintenance type programs? You'll be looking at the ways that the machine is telling you information, such as maybe looking at a spike in voltage, looking at a spike in current, or other sort of characteristic, whether it's a vibration or heat, and then taking action before that machine actually shuts down and affects and impacts production operations, impacting the throughputs that you could achieve and the targets that you have, or some other sort of quality metric. The smart factory is also becoming increasingly more agile and optimized. Many of the organizations that I work with live in a world where production planning is done on a monthly cycle, maybe 4 to 6 weeks. And at the same time, there's an agreement between production operations and production planning to keep frozen periods that are typically for 1 to 2 weeks in length. During COVID, this planning cycle, this frozen period, was on the order of 1 to 2 days. So increasingly, we need to be more agile to be able to respond to these events in real time, because we can't assume that a plan that's being created is going to stay frozen. And if it is to change, it's going to only change by rare exceptions. We need to increasingly be able to make those changes by building agility into our manufacturing operations. And also through this agility, we start to blur the lines between production planning and production operations to make sure that our processes and our assets and our operations are managed in an optimized way. Now, through these characteristics, the smart factory will start to enable improved asset efficiency. It'll start to improve quality, compliance, safety, and productivity, because we're working off of, in this new world, historical and real-time analytics on production data, production process, and production operations. Now, when it comes to applying use cases to the smart factory, there's no shortage of innovation going on across these organizations. We are seeing a number of use cases emerge, where either the application happens to be in information processing technology or physical plant automation technologies that are enabling and creating levels of performance that weren't observed in the past using Lean Six Sigma techniques and approaches, such as optimizing plant layouts or driving OEE. As an example, augmented workforce. We're applying technology to better enable human performance in both decision-making and execution. Think about Google Glass and how they spent years revitalizing that capability to enable, let's say, organizations to train their employees quicker and in different ways. Or new applications that are emerging in maintenance, such as remote support functions. If you look at factory asset intelligence, there's new technology now driving near real-time performance based on all this data coming off the production assets that are providing information on how that asset is performing, if there's sort of any issues on the horizon, and how to proactively start to manage them and improve productivity inside of plant production operations. This asset efficiency should translate into lower asset downtime, can also help optimize capacity, and also improve changeovers. And there's a number of other application areas of factory asset intelligence. Okay, and then if I look over at quality sensing and detection on the left-hand side, quality defects can be identified a lot sooner and help organizations identify discrete human, machine, or environmental factors that cause poor quality. This could lower scrap rates and lead times, and at the same time increase fill rates and yield. Also, a more optimized product quality process could lead to a better quality product being created that has fewer recalls. And of course, this will also help with lowering warranty costs too. Finally, what I'll do is I'll focus on the digital twin. There's been a lot of discussion on digital twin over the last couple of years, and digital twins can be at a machine level, where they help the engineering teams start to identify bottlenecks and improve performance productivities, or they can be at a plant level to simulate how a plant can respond to surges in demand or supply side disruptions. So in broad perspectives, the future of manufacturing is digital, and it is enabled by Industry 4.0 capabilities. Now, value can be created and scaled out from a single asset itself. The asset could be one that happens to be of high value. It could be an asset of low risk. It could be critical, or it could be problematic, but whatever it is, select an asset and run a pilot on it and make that pilot time boxed. And once value is proven or the desired outcomes are achieved, start to scale it out from the asset itself to a production line, from the production line to production operations, and then across the entire network. And as you start to scale this out, value is going to start to be unlocked and captured and flow to the top line, to the bottom line, or both. So the question becomes, how do you start this manufacturing digital transformation journey? Well, there's 3 basic steps: imagine, deliver, and run. For the imagine phase, think about how you can get a big ambition in place and making sure you have the right focus, and then setting up a roadmap to help realize those ambitions. Number 2, deliver. It's all about getting the concept right and understanding the business needs and making those ambitions and those ideas tangible through some sort of design, build, and run type of activity. And finally, it's run, getting the business to scale, scaling out the ambition and scaling out the solution across the enterprise. So and then after that, for your next large-scale transformation, start the same way with Imagine, Deliver, and Run, and follow the different lessons learned, and also take advantage of the new capabilities that you develop, the tools that you have in place, and the new experiences, and start to deliver those capabilities through a digital center of excellence. And following these 3 steps will help you start on your digital transformation journey. Well, that brings me to the end of my presentation today on how the future of manufacturing is taking shape from the 3 megatrends that are evolving the digital supply network, and specifically smart factory manufacturing operations. I hope you found this session interesting and helpful, and feel free to reach out to me afterwards via email if you like, and I'll leave my details up over here. At this time, I look forward to diving into a deeper discussion during the live fireside chat. I look forward to answering some of your questions. Once again, thank you.
Robin, thank you for sharing in the keynote presentation with us and for making yourself available today to have this live Q&A. Really appreciate you taking the time. Know how busy you are, so really appreciate you taking the time. Maybe the place to start. I mean, there's a lot to chew on in your presentation, and I think one thing that we'll make available is for those that we will be distributing sort of the slides from your presentation. There's a lot in there. Encourage people to take a look at it, especially if you're in that supply chain or manufacturing sector. There's lots on there that will be of use to people. But maybe let's take it before we get into a few more of the details. Why don't you summarize of your presentation? What would be the 2, 3, 4 things that people should take away from that presentation, and then go back and drill down in more detail when they have time? What's the thumbnail of your presentation?
Okay, no, that's a good question. So let me summarize by saying that some of the things that you can take away from the presentation are that there's a number of mega trends that are happening. They've been happening for a while, and going forward, they're just going to continue to accelerate over the next 7 to 8 years. And so organizations really need to start thinking about a holistic strategy and how they get ready for Industry 4.0 by coming up with a holistic Industry 4.0 strategy. So that's number one. And then the other thing to keep in mind is that the strategy itself is just a plan, and the plan is a good start. However, to really drive that plan forward and execute against it, you're going to need to have talent and capabilities. Technology is going to be there, but you need to have talent and capabilities. And this is why talent happens to be one of those things that's top of mind as an investment opportunity for different organizations looking to build smart factory capabilities. So start thinking about how talent is going to be developed, how it's going to be retained, how you're going to attract it, because you need that lined up with the holistic strategy that you have. And number 3, once you have that in place, there's a way to start, and that way to start isn't so much to start with a big bang type of approach. You can't boil the ocean here. It'll be too complex. It seldom works, and even if it does work, it'll be moving too slow for being able to even capture value. So you always want to start small, and take a hypothesis-based approach in terms of how you want to start. We see a lot of organizations that start with these pilots, but they don't have really a good view on where the value is. And it ends up being a pilot that runs longer than it should because there's no real linkage or tie to where the benefits are. So start small, make it very, very focused on where to start, test out those ideas, and once you start to see value, once you start to see the desired outcomes that you're looking for, then you can start to scale out. So that would be I think those would be the 2 or 3 or 4 things as key takeaways from that presentation.
Listen, last year, the last couple of years in this manufacturing summit, I think this is our 10th or 11th year we've been running this. And Deloitte's always been a great partner of ours and participated in this through the years. So the thought leadership that you have in the horsepower you have inside your organization has always been sort of present in these sessions we've been doing. Though I think last year or the year before, maybe actually both, we touched on talent as being one of the most critical things of advanced manufacturing, and for manufacturing, that value-added manufacturing, which is what us in Canada, that's what we want. We can't compete on low cost and low value products. We need that high value value-added manufacturing base. And so let me as part of smart manufacturing, you touched on smart manufacturing and the next generation, and technology is a huge part of that. But what's the talent part of that? I mean, what does that look like when you say, you know, you got to have the right people in order to sort of move into manufacturing 4.0 and that smart manufacturing piece? Talk a little bit about what the workforce that a manufacturer, whether they're a supply chain, smaller supply chain in a larger context, or a larger employer that is doing the manufacturing. What's that human capital going to look like in this context?
Okay, so that's another good question. So thanks for asking that. I think talent is actually one of the most important things, if not the most important thing that you have to think about. Technology is obviously important. Technology is going to enable a lot of this new evolution to gain all these efficiency, but you actually have to have the talent to drive these different capabilities, finding new ways to become more efficient. We talked about how the baby boomers are retiring. There's an aging industrial workforce, and there's also a coupling with the actual the gap between the trade skills and also the new digital analytical capabilities that are needed to run these digital transformation programs. So from a talent perspective, talent is actually more important than having the right set of technology capabilities, because it's going to drive the applications to solve specific issues inside the organizations. And that talent is going to have to be very agile. They're going to have to be creative in the way that they start to solve problems, because you can actually get some of the machines to automate a process that might be, as you called it, a lower value add. Maybe I'm going to automate a process. Maybe it's today a lot of organizations are actually spending a lot of time working with paper to pull out the information, run the analyses, and then drive towards some sort of insight. And that takes a lot of time. But if you can bring in some sort of software solution to do all that, I'll say lower value add type of data manipulations, analysis, and you can have the talent focus on coming up and applying the insights. That's one area where talent can focus, and that talent is going to be also focused on running projects in a slightly different way, running programs in a slightly different way, which is about working with iterations, being open to experimentation, being curious about it, versus hiring in the past where it was focused on key skill sets. The talent of the future is going to have to be curious, and they're going to have to work in agile ways and continuous learning, versus having the knowledge that you have as you come out of university and colleges is also going to be important, because things are going to change and they're going to evolve very, very rapidly. So having a talent that's going to continuously learn. These are some of the soft skills that we've viewed in the past, but these are, in the digital ages, they're the skill sets that organizations need to search for. Curiosity, continuous learning, being agile, and working in different type of iterative ways to drive towards some sort of actions, and testing and experimentation is a huge part of that.
You know, I think that's really important for all of us to understand, is that soft skills even in this manufacturing space, there's in a digital era where even if you're in an auto plant, you're running computers and you're doing robotics, and so the level of sophistication for everyone from the plant floor right on up is changing rapidly. And that work that, again, Deloitte is part of, along with U of W and others, doing the future of work and learning, and what does that look like across sectors, really important for and good for us to have identified here.
Actually, maybe the one more thing I'll add, if I could. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt the thought there, but I was going to add collaboration. I think you hit a key thing here. Just like the supply chains are evolving to be more collaborative, talent is also going to have to be more collaborative too. And it's not just within the organization itself, but also externally too, with academic institutions, with industrial organizations. Maybe it's a consortium that you're a part of, the test idea. So this idea of experimentation and learning and applying the outcome, and then looking at the result, but also collaboration. Collaboration is going to be a key part of future job functions.
You know, one of the things that came out in Canada's Innovation Corridor, the Toronto to Waterloo corridor, when we had we formed Next Generation Manufacturing Consortium, that came out of the super cluster idea that the federal government put funding behind, was really around that idea of collaboration, of where can we get new materials, new concepts, new processes which we all need in Canada to compete, and then take that to that next step when you put the last 20 points on, which is the how do you make your thing different than someone else's. But that collaboration is going to be important for I think you're bang on about that, and I think the way that we work together is going to be really important. Kind of leads me to the question of, and I think you touched on it, but maybe we can drill a little bit more. What are in general terms, the competitive advantages that Canadian firms have and should be leveraging in a global context? That's what we're talking about today. We got local supply chains. How does that tie into the global manufacturing marketplace, and what's our role in that? But what are the things that we should be thinking about ourselves, let alone telling others are our competitive advantages?
Okay, no, that's actually another good question. And I'm going to
try roll today, Rob. I'm on a roll today.
Yeah, and I think that the points you also bring up with the next generation manufacturing supercluster is going to be part of this answer too, because again, I'm going to focus on talent, just because there's no shortage of technologies in the world. They're all at different stages. But talent, as I mentioned, there's a real skill set gap. And from a Canadian competitiveness perspective, Canada has a very, very well-educated workforce. We have a lot of strong academic institutions across Canada. Across innovation, we have innovation networks. And there's a lot of collaboration that they're doing with industry. So talent is a big competitive advantage that we have at our academic institutions. We also have our governments that are supporting and helping drive the Canadian competitiveness in the manufacturing sector up. So we have access to these superclusters that are providing talent across the country. There's a digital supercluster in BC. There happens to be the manufacturing supercluster, the next generation manufacturing supercluster in Ontario. And actually that was expanded out to be across the entire supply chain across Canada. So you've got that to tap into. And there's also the AI supercluster in Montreal. So you have the government also trying to promote collaboration. Not a lot of other nations across the world, countries across the world have this access, this type of funding, this type of support for innovation from the government. So let's tap into that as a competitive advantage that we can tap into. And on top of that, there's also different programs that the government is trying to instantiate within these academic institutions, trying to build in industrial training programs, whether it's for the circular economy, cyber physical systems. There's different cooperative models between, instead of just co-oping at one organization, you co-op at two different organizations to build this apprentice model. So there's this whole focus on talent development that I think we start off as a strong base from an education perspective, but we have access to innovation networks. We have access to a different model between industrial organizations. And we also have support from the government itself, the federal government, to support this build of collaboration. So let's tap into those things. And on top of that, we have I think we have some world-class organizations that are also situated in Canada, well, I won't name them, but we have industrial solution providers over here that are supporting and providing software solutions. A lot of this stuff in the future, a lot of these capabilities are going to be about enabling IoT type capabilities. Information is going to be generated somewhere. You have to have data scientists that can analyze this information. You have cloud platforms in place. So these industrial organizations that actually develop these solutions are really supporting organizations. They're supporting the government to make sure that we as organizations can tap into not just the talent side of it, but support the talent to grow from being ready to deploy these types of solutions in the market to help organizations start to realize revenue improvements, get into predictive capabilities, find ways to improve the yield. And at that point, when you can start to do this in a more efficient way, then maybe we can start to compete with low-cost producers, because we have software doing some of the stuff that we don't want to do it anymore, but we have our educated workforce looking at higher value skills and really deriving insights and finding ways to operate competitively. So, we might be able to also compete on a low-cost basis too, if we leverage these capabilities afforded to us by these different solution providers.
Listen, we're almost out of time, and I'll be in trouble if we go late because I was instructed to make sure we ended on time. But it's a fascinating conversation, and appreciate your time. I'm going to go a little off script, just in as much a little context. We're moving in Ontario from now it hasn't necessarily affected manufacturing, but from stage 2 to stage 3, and the rumor mill has that the economy will completely be wide open in mid-August. I think there's a tremendous risk in that of if there is a flare-up, that it could, taking steps forward and then having to go back. So that's the context piece of this question. Is I think we caution making sure we're vaccinated, and so that the economy can fully open, because we've heard in our other panels, supply chains, whether it's Jennifer and Simplify Supply Chains and all the vagaries across sectors, Jeremy at Canadian Shield, and Steve Mine at Eclipse Automation. There are challenges around how we've managed this and how we manage it moving forward. So that's the context piece. Maybe from your perspective, how would you say, what are the things that we've learned about manufacturing in context from the pandemic, and how do we apply that moving forward? I don't know if that's an unfair question, but we've obviously all been thinking about how this affected things. What's your observation about what we should learn and take away so that we have a more resilient manufacturing sector here in Canada?
Okay, so I think some of the things that we've learned over the course of the pandemic are that first, the work can be done through digital means. If anything, the pandemic has taught is that these digital capabilities that we've been hearing about for the last 5 to 6 years, you don't need to spend the next 5 to 7 years, next 5 to 10 years to plan out how to execute them. Very, very quickly, organizations were able to respond to the pandemic situation, find ways to keep operations running. And at the same time, because there was a demand for finding ways to keep operations running, there was new solutions that were brought out to the market very, very quickly. So innovation, and the innovation always stems from a need. Necessity is the mother of an invention. And I think as a part of that, we found that we can pivot as we need to and move forward with new solutions, and digital capabilities allowed us to do that. At the same time, I think we also learned that we've got to build more resilience into our supply chains, and that it's not enough just to look at your direct customers or direct suppliers to figure out what's happening. We've got to be thinking about our customers, and our suppliers, and then focus on those suppliers that happen to be, I guess, the most critical part of our own product development and life cycle in our supply chain. So let's find a way to build that resilience into our supply chains, because disruptions in the future are going to continue. And these digital capabilities that we have at the digital core that allow organizations to connect and see and share information transparently are absolutely needed. So we build that resilience into the supply chain. So I think it was a good signal that showed that we can respond. We can start to restart our operations, and at the same way we can start to thrive in new ways.
Yeah, listen, that's a great place to leave it, because the people that are watching this today, and the many that will watch it after, as we send these recordings, or they come and watch it after the fact, there are going to be different businesses from right across supply chains, big and small, and from across the different verticals inside of the manufacturing space. And that's an important lesson for them to hear and learn how they can protect themselves and their own space by, as you say, so your own supply chains and your suppliers' supply chains, and having a better understanding how it all connects, really important. So thank you for that. I went a little off script, but you handled it with great aplomb, so thank you very much. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but I do want to thank Robin again for making time to be with us live today, and for your insights and for your presentation, and to the entire Deloitte team for the support as our founding sponsor of this year's Manufacturing Summit. Thanks so much. And thank you to all of you. Thank you. And thank you to all of you for watching today's live session. Thanks so much, and have a great afternoon. Thanks, Robin.
Thanks. Bye.
Wow, what an incredible day. We're so fortunate to have such strong leaders here in the region of Waterloo who are dedicated to revitalizing Canada's manufacturing economy for future prosperity. They have proven to be adaptable, resilient, and innovative during these turbulent times. Once again, I would like to take the opportunity to thank our incredible sponsors once again. Our founding sponsor, Deloitte, our gold sponsor, the BDC, the Business Development Bank of Canada, Cowen Insurance Group, TD Bank, Toyota Motor Manufacturing Canada, and the Waterloo Economic Development Corporation. Our silver sponsors today are Kuntz Electroplating and Simplify Supply Chain Solutions, and our bronze sponsors, CIBC, Conestoga Meat Packers, GHD, and the Immigration Partnership. Our community partners today, the Centre for Family Business, the City of Kitchener, Excellence in Manufacturing Consortium, and the Manufacturing Innovation Network. And finally, thank you for participating today and for your continued support as we have adjusted the virtual format for this event and many others throughout the year. We hope you've enjoyed today's event and look forward to hopefully seeing you in person soon. In the meantime, I'll leave you with this: stay positive, test negative, get vaccinated, and we're stronger together. Have a great day.